Tennessee missed out on a bowl for the 5th time this decade. Can Jeremy Pruitt get them back on track? Find out here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.
Tennessee showed signs of promise last season, beating 2 top 25 teams in Auburn on the road and Kentucky at Neyland Stadium. But the Volunteers still just went 5-7 and only had 1 loss decided by 1 possession. The other 6 losses were decided by an average of 28.8 points per game. But I do think Jeremy Pruitt has his team going in the right direction, and I think they will take a major step forward in 2019 as he returns plenty of experience this season, including 10 starters on offense and 6 starters on defense. And the Volunteers will, of course, be led by one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the SEC in Jarrett Guarantano, who threw for over 1,900 yards last year, 12 touchdowns, and just 3 interceptions. The offense will take a major step forward overall in 2019 with those 10 returning starters. Running back Chandler is back, who rushed for over 600 yards last year, and he returns, Guarantano does, a phenomenal crew of wide receivers, including Marquez Callaway, Juwan Jennings, and Josh Palmer. So this Tennessee offense, who at times were able to put up some points last year, but also struggled against teams like Vanderbilt and Charlotte, where they only put up 14, could put up much better numbers in 2019 than they did in 2018. Defensively, they returned 6 starters from a unit that allowed 27.9 points per game, which doesn't sound all that great until you realize that was their best defensive mark since 2015. Daniel Patulli returns at linebacker, the leading tackler for the Volunteers in 2018. And Nigel Warrior returns and brings some experience and leadership in this Volunteers secondary. So I think overall, Jeremy Pruitt, being a defensive-minded coach, will improve this Tennessee defense once again in 2019. That 27.9 points per game could very well decrease to about 25 to 24 points per game. They opened the season with a win against Georgia State. We're not too worried about that. Great way to open up the season with a lot of excitement surrounding the program. But then they get BYU at home, and this is a game that Tennessee cannot afford to overlook, and they must be prepared for. The Cougars return a lot of experience as well, including 9 on offense and 8 on defense. They return their quarterback in Zach Wilson, who kind of emerged late last season for the Cougars, but towards the end of the season was playing some phenomenal football and went perfect in their bowl game against Western Michigan. If this game was in Provo, in Utah, I would be picking the Cougars to beat the Volunteers. That's how good I think this BYU team is. But the first half of their schedule is absolutely brutal. Games against Washington, USC, Utah, and Tennessee. A lot of those coming on the road as well. One of them coming here at Neyland Stadium, and I think Tennessee gets a close win over a much improved BYU squad. And it also should be noted, though, that BYU did beat Arizona and Wisconsin on the road last year. So they're no stranger to difficult road games. Tennessee must be prepared, but I think they get a close win over the Cougars from the Independents. And they are 3-0 on the year, halfway to bowl eligibility in 2019. They then go on the road to face off against Florida, where the Volunteers have lost 7 straight at the Swamp. That included a 47-21 loss last year here at Neyland Stadium, and the last time they visited the Swamp, we all know how that one ended, a 26-20 victory for Florida on that insane Hail Mary to end the game. This year, Florida has the potential to be even better than they were in 2018. But I don't think their schedule is going to allow for that. With road games against LSU, South Carolina, of course a date against Georgia and Jacksonville, and then a road game at Missouri as well. But Florida's offense will take another step forward in year 2 under Dan Mullen. Felipe Franks, like I said about Jarrett Guarantano, is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the SEC. And the Gators will boast one of the best defenses in the SEC as well. If this game was in Neyland Stadium, I would expect a bigger fight from the Volunteers because of how much they're returning. But in the Swamp, with the talent that Florida returns, I don't see Tennessee winning this game. They fall to Florida for the 8th straight time in Gainesville. They get a bye week on September 28th, going into what everybody's trendy upset pick of the season is, the Volunteers upsetting the Georgia Bulldogs in Knoxville. And I'm here to tell you that's just not going to happen. I don't believe it's going to happen. Georgia, like Tennessee, is coming off a bye week coming into this game. Last time here, Tennessee was shut out by the Bulldogs 41-0. Last year, they fell to the Bulldogs 38 28-12. So abysmal performances from the Volunteers the past 2 seasons against Georgia. And the scary thing is Georgia is only getting better. Kirby Smart continues to rebuild and restock this program on the recruiting trail. And this year they had the chance to be even better than they were last year. Jake Fromm is back, one of the best quarterbacks in the entire nation. DeAndre Swift is back, one of the best running backs in the entire SEC. And the defense will once again will be one of the best in the entire SEC. Both teams coming off a week of rest. Even though this game is at Neyland Stadium, expect Tennessee to put up more than 12 points. Expect them to actually score this time. They weren't able to do that last time here. But they will fall to Georgia, a team that, if they lose, will only lose once in the regular season. They are legitimate college football playoff contenders, and one of those wins will come against the Volunteers. They then remain home, though, to face off against Mississippi State, another team that is coming off a bye week. And you know how I am when I see teams coming off bye weeks. I think that gives them a huge boost. But that's not going to be the case for the Bulldogs this season, and especially for this game. Mississippi State has a lot of questions to answer themselves. And while many people like to point fingers and say they're going to be just fine, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they take a step back in year 2 under Joe Moorhead. Nick Fitzgerald is gone. They have to decide between Keaton Thompson and Tommy Stevens, who will more than likely be the starter at the beginning of the season for Mississippi State. The defense, though, lost a lot of talent to the NFL. And I think they take a major step back in 2019 from a unit that only allowed a little over 12 points per game in 2018. So this Mississippi State team is not going to be as good as they were last year. And keep in mind, it was a disappointing year for them last year. At Neyland Stadium, assuming Tennessee does not have a Georgia hangover, assuming they're not hungover after what could be a beatdown to the Bulldogs, I think they beat Mississippi State at home. A quality win for Jeremy Pruitt and his squad that need to get every possible win they can to get to the postseason. One of those does come against Mississippi State, a team that I expect to take a step back in 2019. They then go on the road to face off against Alabama. And as we all know, I don't think anybody is going to beat Alabama in the regular season this year. Tennessee has lost 12 straight to the Crimson Tide, with 7 of those 12 being decided by 30 or more points. That included last year's meeting when Tennessee fell 58-21. Of course, anytime you see someone from the Nick Saban coaching tree going up against their former boss, it's an intriguing storyline, and that's what we're going to have here with Jeremy Pruitt facing off against the Crimson Tide once again. But this Alabama team could be even better than they were in 2018. Tua Tagovailoa, one of the best wide receiver corps in the entire nation, and a defense that will not take that big of a step back, if any, this season. On the road at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Tennessee does not stand a chance. They fall to the Crimson Tide. They then get South Carolina at home, and this is absolutely a winnable game for the Volunteers. And after losing 3 of their past 4 games, they will certainly want a winnable game here against the Gamecocks. They lost 27-24 to South Carolina last season. And one thing we have to keep in mind, though, is that South Carolina returns quite a bit of talent themselves. 7 on offense, 7 on defense. One of the best quarterbacks in the SEC and most experienced quarterbacks in the SEC in Jake Bentley. And he returns a very solid wide receiver core, a talented running back in Rico Dowdle, and a defense that might be the best that Will Muschamp has had since he arrived at South Carolina. I love this Gamecocks team, but they face one of the most toughest schedules, the toughest schedule, I should say, in the entire nation. But despite all of that, I think they come on the road and beat Tennessee at Neyland Stadium. That's how much I like this Gamecock squad. That's how talented I think they are. While you might not see this Gamecocks team win 9 or 10 games like I think they could if they didn't have such a difficult schedule, they still have that talent there to beat these little toss-up games. Tennessee is one of them. And even though the Volunteers host them, South Carolina comes in and gets a narrow victory over the Gamecocks, and Tennessee will drop their 4th straight to South Carolina. They get a bounce-back win, though, after losing 4 of their past 5 games. They beat UAB to kick off November, one of the most important months in all of college football. And sitting there with that win over UAB, they now have 5 wins. So they're 1 win away from bowl eligibility. And we'll start here with the Kentucky game, as they've got 3 games remaining this season. Last year, as we mentioned earlier in the video, Tennessee upset Kentucky, who was number 12 at the time, 24-7 at Neyland Stadium. Now, I believe that was right after Kentucky fell to Georgia, which prevented them from winning the SEC East. Not to take anything away from Tennessee, but I do think that was a major cause for Kentucky in that game. A bit of a hangover after that 34-17 loss to the Bulldogs. But nonetheless, I do think that Tennessee beat Kentucky this year, even though it is on the road. You look at what happened last year. Kentucky had a better team in 2018 than they're going to have in 2019. Gone is Josh Allen, the anchor of their defense. Gone is Benny Snell, the all-time leading rusher at Kentucky. Now Terry Wilson is back at quarterback, and while he can beat you on the ground, he wasn't that impressive through the air, throwing for a little over, 1,100 yards last year. To beat Kentucky last year, you had to force Terry Wilson to win it through the air. You had to shut down Benny Snell, win it through the air. Tennessee did that, holding Kentucky to just 77 rushing yards in that 24-7 victory. Their running game's not going to be that powerful this year. I think Terry Wilson improves, but not enough to win against Tennessee, even though this game is in Lexington. And Kentucky falls to the Volunteers, and Tennessee clinches bowl eligibility on the road against Kentucky. They get a bye week on November 16th with 2 games remaining. And that's a good bye week there. I like bye weeks in November. They go on the road to face off against Missouri, though, a team that Tennessee has lost to 50-17 each of the past 2 seasons. It's an unbelievable statistic. They have the exact same score the past 2 years. But Missouri is going to be even better than they've been the past 2 seasons, with Kelly Bryant coming in from Clemson at quarterback for the Tigers, Larry Roundtree back at running back who rushed for over 1,200 yards, a potent crew of wide receivers, and like I said about South Carolina, maybe the best defense that Barry Odom has fielded during his time in Columbia. This Missouri team's the real deal, one that could win 9 or 10 games, and I pray that their bowl ban gets lifted from the NCAA, especially if they can win 9 or 10 games. Even though they're coming off a bye, this Missouri team is legit. Their offense may be even better. Actually, I'm not going to say go that far because Drew Lock was pretty amazing, but they're going to be pretty potent once again, the SEC. The defense will take a major step forward. Missouri beats Tennessee, especially with this game being on the road. But they close out the season with a win over Vanderbilt, their in-state rival, where Tennessee has lost to the Commodores 3 straight times by an average of 18 points. That included a 38-13 loss to Vanderbilt last year that sent Vanderbilt bowling and kept Tennessee home for the holidays. But this year they snapped that 3-game losing streak to their in-state rivals. Vanderbilt returns a dominant rushing attack with Keyshawn Vaughn, and that's going to have to be the focus for the Tennessee defense, is to shut down that run game. They have some great wide receivers led by Kalijah Lipscomb, but can Riley Neal, the transfer quarterback from Ball State, build that chemistry up quickly enough with those wide receivers at Vanderbilt? I don't think that's going to be the case. The SEC is a much bigger transition from the MAC. I don't know how he will thrive in this Vanderbilt offense. Tennessee wins at home against Vanderbilt, snaps their 3-game losing streak, wins that game, and finishes 7-5. And let me tell you something, that's a 2-game swing for Jeremy Pruitt and the Volunteers. Tennessee's not winning a national title this year. They're not winning 10 games this year. They're not winning 9 games this year. Maybe you could push the envelope to 8, but I think 7-5 is the most realistic expectation for Tennessee this year. They return a lot of experience, a lot of talent, and the best thing about this team is they're still very young. Jeremy Pruitt doing a phenomenal job across the board. He's got a lot of youth, which means that in 2020, Tennessee could be even better, which is pretty scary to think about for any of their SEC opponents. So guys, as always, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Go follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Gridiron Expert, and check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com. Sign up for our newsletter and sign up for our expert picks. For just $30, you will receive every single one of our 2019 college football spread picks, including the postseason. And I can promise you that's a deal you do not want to pass up. So join our team, sign up today only at thegridironexpert.com. And guys, once again, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.